There we are. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Senate Democratic Caucus. I'm Allison Clarkson, the majority leader. I have the honor of being the majority leader. And today we're going to be addressing three issues that of great interest. All issues are of great interest to the Senate, but these three are this week's focus. We're going to be looking at the child care legislation, which we have gotten from the House. We're going to be looking at the proposal for changes in the Fish and Wildlife Board. And we're going to be looking at the PPP tax implications for not this year, but for 2021. So we're going to begin with Senators Lyons and Hardy taking us through the child care bill, which I believe is H-171. Thank you, Senators.
Okay, I'll start, and then Ruth will be involved as well. So we have started taking testimony on H-171. We're by no means finished with it, but this is a really significant bill. And as you know, through the pandemic, childcare has risen to the top of needs for our working families. If we didn't know it before, we know it very greatly now. And the gaps that were exposed during the pandemic will continue. But this bill, and this bill also is a continuation of work that we have began, I believe it was last session. I forget, maybe the session before. Actually, I think it was the session before. And this bill before us now establishes some goals for child care support for working families. Includes a very robust goal of stating that families will spend no more than 10% of their annual income on child care. As we know right now, people can spend as much as 30% or 40% of their income just to keep their children safe while they're working. And it's become really impossible for many people. So the bill establishes that goal. It doesn't have it doesn't provide the funding to get us to that goal, but it will provide an opportunity for us to think about specific steps to move forward. As we started a couple of years ago, there's a program, and I think you all received the information that we got from the Let's Grow Kids group that has done so much work in this area with our businesses, with our childcare folks, and with others. So you have that information. You also have a very short summary of the bill. I'm not going through that. You can look at it on your own. But I will identify some of the areas that are important in the bill. One of the areas is the Child Care Financial Assistance Program. The state currently provides funding and subsidy for families who of specific income levels up to 150% of the federal poverty level. This bill will expand that, so more people will be eligible for child care financial assistance. The question that we probably won't be able to answer as we look at the bill is what effect, if any, will the federal dollars have on this? So there's a lot in the bill that may be affected by the federal appropriations, but at this time we're looking at the bill as it is and its importance to the state. There is funding available for providers. One of the things that we learn about childcare as we review our childcare providers and those care facilities is how underfunded they are, and the payment for childcare workers is pretty low. So the bill has provisions to provide an increase in the reimbursement rate for our childcare facilities within the state standards. So there's a program known as the STARS program, and that will be providing some funding, a tiered approach to funding based on the stars and what level star the child care facility has. When we looked at this reimbursement process a few years ago, we looked at what's known as market rates. So how much should we be paying, and then how much are we paying? Currently, we're below market rate. I think we're at the 2017 market rate, and this bill will move that market rate up, I think, to the 2019 level, but maybe Ruth can chip in on that one. So there are, all of which is to say that there is funding available in the bill that will help keep our providers in place so that they won't close, and that they have the funding to sustain them. The other section of the bill that I think is important in this area are scholarships for early childhood educators. It's part of our workforce efforts in health and welfare. And so childcare workers are, again, are underfunded. And so providing scholarships for them to first get a degree in early education, or there's also a section on loan repayment or loan payment, so that these child care providers can continue to work without that debt hanging over their heads. So that's also in the bill. The biggest appropriation that's in the bill is the money related to the child care family assistance program, and setting out-of-pocket limits for people who have their kids in childcare. So there's also a section in the bill on improving the IT system. We started to invest in that the last time we looked at childcare, and this is another upgrade to the information technology system for our childcare providers. There are a lot of reports in the bill to look at the system of care across the state. And so some of those reports are relying on the Building Bright Futures group that exists within the Department of Children and Families. And that group, and probably in consultation with others, naturally, and with interested parties, will be looking at the system of care and how our care facilities are coordinated and organized across the state. So that's where the title of the bill on governance comes from. So it's, in some ways, it's not purely governance, it's really about systems analysis. So there will be reports on how our child care system is coordinated and organized. There are other reports in the bill on funding and financing for child care. But I think the most important pieces that we see are the pieces that are supporting families, that increase the eligibility for child care support, and then the support for our centers themselves. So by providing support for families, that money goes directly to child care centers and it keeps them whole. I think those are the biggest chunks of the bill. There are some long-term goals established in the bill. The 10% of salary is one that I think is critically important. Then finally, probably the one that's the heavy lift for everyone is to analyze how we can fully fund our child care system and make it stable going forward. So there will be a report coming from experts to identify that long-term funding source. There are ideas about what it will be, but at this point, we won't have a specific recommendation. Rather, it will be up to the folks who are more expert to look at funding sources for childcare. I don't want to take too much time. Senator Clarkson, Senator Hardy, do you want to add some comments?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lyons. I don't have much to add. I just want to confirm that it would be the 2019 market rates. That's not actually in the bill, but the beauty of being live streamed on YouTube, Sarah Kenny texted me the answer. It's in the underlying calculation of the rates. The other thing I would add is there is, in addition to the larger studies on systems and financing, there's a working group that would get to work immediately about how much and how we could use the ARPA funds and other federal funds that are coming to the state to support this bill and childcare in general, because the bill was drafted prior to ARPA funds and everything's kind of a moving target. And we do know that there are some federal relief funds that are specific to childcare. So that would get to work right away. So in the fall, they would be able to make recommendations to either JFO and then later to the full legislature on those funds. And I think that's all I wanted to add.
Great. So any questions? Thank you. This is good. We'll obviously be looking at this further. Any questions at this point from the caucus?
Alice, I have a question.
Yeah, Alice.
I'm just wondering, in any of the studies or any place in there, is there something addressing the issue of, I would say, incentives for additional centers? In other words, even businesses to start a center, or, you know, other places to start a center so that there would be more slots available and in more places, because there's, I think these things are certainly great, but is there anything that's going to inspire anybody to open new centers and thereby increase the numbers of slots available in the state?
Yeah, good.
So that's such an excellent question, and actually it might be something that suggests some policy language that we put in the bill. There isn't, as to my knowledge, there isn't anything in the bill that relates to that. I think it's more indirect on having greater stability for centers. So then one might feel that it's financially viable to open a center, and also the workforce incentives and provisions might also do that. But your comment, Senator, is really right on target and something that I think our committee should consider. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I will just add, I mean, to underscore what Senator Lyons said about workforce. Right now, a lot of the problems with being able to open another center is there's not actually people to work at it. So as there's more workforce available, that will help. And the systems analysis study, I think, would also get at that sort of idea of where are the sort of pockets in the state that are need additional coverage and slots, and really look at the sort of holistic system of childcare in the state and start to address your very well pointed question, Senator Nitka.
So may I tag on to Senator Nitka's question? And then I see Thomas Chittenden. My question is, that is one question, which is we need more providers given how many have closed. Second is, what are we doing? Actually, I appreciate the scholarship piece, but sadly, childcare is so underpaid. What are we doing to address the bringing salaries up so that more people are interested in going into this area in the first place? Because I mean, that's to me another barrier for both workforce and future of childcare as a business.
So that's exactly right. And by having additional money in the system, that money will be going to our child care centers. So if we increase the CCFAP, the money that supports families, that money is a payment to our centers. So that then would enable increased payment to the staff, and then also the scholarships and loan repayment stuff. So yeah, you're right. They are probably some of our lowest paid professionals in the state. They don't earn what their degree suggests they should. And yet we're very concerned about that.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Senator Chittenden.
My question actually also piggybacks off Senator Nicka's. I have not read the bill, so my apologies if it is obviously in there. But I am very interested to know, based on my personal experience and how important it was when we first started having children as a 2-income household, and my spouse who went back to work, the most important thing for her in finding childcare was proximity to where she was working. So, and I know some employers dedicate space to have childcare centers within their physical operations and within their buildings. And one thing that's been in the news over the last year, and I'm personally very concerned with, is the 2nd or 3rd largest employer in the state closed their on-campus childcare center, the University of Vermont. Does this bill address, incentivize, motivate employers so that there are more childcare options in close proximity to our employment centers, so that we're not having childcare, at least grow more childcare available, but further out into the countrysides, distancing working mothers and fathers from their kids while in childcare facilities?
You've just hit one of my pet concerns, and I think that the systems analysis that's in the bill will help answer that question. Also, to know that we are hearing from business groups about this. The issue is our childcare centers affordable for business groups? Remember, they are services, so they're not producing a profit. And so they need to be sustainable in and of themselves. And that's one of the problems. So we will be, I think, asking the question about facilities. Can businesses provide a facility? And then can there be a cost benefit analysis to determine if the facility can survive there? I've done some of that myself in doing an analysis of facilities, and then what the overhead and what the cost would be for childcare centers, and then how does that fit in? So you've asked a really good question. Childcare centers associated with businesses have closed like gangbusters, and it's really unfortunate.
Can I just add? Can I just add a couple of things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. One thing to note is regarding the compensation of childcare providers. There's language in the legislative intent section of the bill that ensure all families with young children have affordable access to high quality child care and early education, and that Vermont's early childhood educators are fairly compensated and well supported. So that's part of what the intent of this bill is. And to build on what Senator Lyons said, we got testimony from a specific childcare center last week that went through the numbers of if the increases in the CFAP payments were to go forward the way that they are, this is how much they would be able to pay their childcare providers more, like the financial difference it would make in their meeting their payroll and being able to provide higher salaries. So I think it's part of the broader mix. And again, to what Senator Chittenden and Nika asked about the facilities, I think the systems analysis will cover a lot of that, and that includes on the working group businesses. So there are people from the sort of quote unquote business community that would be included in that discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. Any further questions on?
Senator White has.
Yes, Senator Kitchell and Senator White. Senator White and then Senator Kitchell.
So this isn't a question, but just a little comment. In 1966, I know Georgia's getting a bad rap right now, but in 1966, I was a Vista volunteer there, and we worked with the Cole swimsuit factory to set up a daycare center on their factory grounds. And it didn't, whether the daycare center itself paid for itself, it reduced his absenteeism, it improved his productivity, because most of the people who worked there were women stitchers, but that was 1966 in Georgia. So,
so there we can learn from that.
Right.
Definitely. Thank you, Senator White.
Senator Kitchell.
Well, just picking up, we've actually had employers in Vermont, but they've discontinued the programs. The last one was the University of Vermont. I think years ago, Ben and Jerry's had the childcare program, and they end up getting discontinued because of cost. And so it does raise the issue around sort of that partnership that exists. And reference was made to ARPA funding. I would also point out that there are a couple of other federal changes that would impact as well. And that would be an increase in the federal EITC, which is adding to family income. And then there is the provision to increase the child credit. So there's a whole number of things coming into play here that may actually be very helpful because where we are is reflective of the constraints that we have on the available state revenues. There's no escaping it. And we have a lot of lofty language and, you know, certainly the intent on affordability and fair compensation is similar language we have for our mental health agencies. And it's similar language where we have for housing, where families shouldn't be spending more than 30% on housing. And yet we know many of them are spending 60, 70%. And so I just want to bring home something that we deal with all the time. You know, our payments to reach up families, we have a standard of need. We don't even meet half of that. So my concern is not that we shouldn't hold out goals and that we shouldn't, but I think laced with that is some reality that we can put anything we want in statute and then we not withstand it because we haven't got the capability of fulfilling it. And so one of the things I think we have to really understand is, will there be some ongoing federal assistance here and how we can build better partnerships with business, because it's not just a state government problem. And so often that's how it gets portrayed. So I'm just bringing back from the days many years ago when Mike Riston was head of our child care assistance program, and a lot has happened since then. But one of the big issues still continues to be, and we've seen centers come and go. It ties into funding as well, and just the nature, the difficulty of these are difficult jobs, and so compensation is always an important thing, whether we're talking about the child care, whether we're talking about care for other vulnerable populations. So I'm hoping, I just want to reference a couple more federal changes that in fact may help us as we want to gain and make progress in this area, that we have to understand the interplay.
Yeah, we're very concerned about that, and it's so difficult right now to predict what the child block grant is going to mean, or what the EITC will mean as we look at the bill. So it's like juggling 4 different things at different times and expecting everything to sugar off together. So there's 4 different metaphors in that one, analogies in that one. But Senator Kitchell, you did bring up again the whole business connection, and it would be, we probably should put our heads together to decide that if businesses are willing to take a step forward on this, then how can we ensure that businesses can continue to do that? And then that might bring in the finance committee, but that's not part of our conversation right now.
Great, thank you. If there are no other questions, we'll shift gears to fish and wildlife. Senator Bray, would you be kind enough to frame up this issue for us and just give us a notion of where we are?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. So Fish and Wildlife received a bill recently, S-129. Those of us on the committee and maybe a few others have gotten a lot of email about it because it deals with the Fish and Wildlife Board. And then, so you're talking about hunting, and it's stirred up a fair amount of controversy that honestly, I don't think the bill itself merits, but because it touches a a lot of issues, and we would want to have a public hearing because there's always broad interest in anything related to fish and wildlife. I talked with committee members over the weekend, and given that we probably only have about a month left and maybe 2 to 3 weeks as a morning committee, we don't think there's adequate time to really dig into the issue and take the kind of testimony and have a public hearing that it would really require to do it properly. So we will postpone action on it till, we had just introduced it in the last week, and we'll postpone action on it fully until next session. But just for information, I think part of the reason I say I'm a little surprised at how worried some folks were, it really just proposed making the Fish and Wildlife Board advisory, and then having the Fish and Wildlife Department itself do the rulemaking. So right now there's an unusual structure, and that rather than delegating rulemaking directly to an agency or department, we've delegated rulemaking around fishing and hunting out to the Fish and Wildlife Board, which is staffed by 14 citizens from around the state. They actually do the rulemaking, and it's not the Fish and Wildlife Department that has control over those rules. Those rules then go on to LCAR. So the proposal was to bring the rulemaking back into the department. Anyway, so it would be a shift. I don't think as big a shift as some people were worried,
Certainly.
but we know it's important to many people, regardless of where they are in the issue. We want to give it more time, and that time will be next year.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Bray?
So when we get emails, Senator Bray, we'll say that there's no action this session because there needs to be time for more testimony and public hearings.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, thank you. Thank you. That's helpful, I think, for many of us. Okay, so to that, also thinking about next year, we are going to have Senator Cummings and Senator Sirotkin talk to us about the tax implications of the payroll protection program for tax year 2021. Because we've also gotten, many of us have gotten quite a few emails about this. I think they're conflating the issues of tax year 2020 with 21. So Senator Cummings, do you want to frame the issue up?
Okay.
Or
Little history. Vermont has always, or at least in recent history, aligned itself with the federal tax code retrospectively. It's a standard line in the miscellaneous tax bill. We line ourselves up with the previous year, and that's the rules that apply by the time we pass miscellaneous tax. We're past income tax day, and those are the rules it's being passed under. Never been an issue. But then the federal government has never changed tax codes in December for the year starting in January. This year, we aligned with last tax code in August. Come up, and we get up to, I think it was October, November, and the federal government says the PPP loans, when they become grants, so you had to apply, and if you paid your employees and, covered your payroll with that, those funds are not taxable. They're tax exempt. And the cost was somewhere around $12 million. Well, that got some committee members' attention in finance, because I know we're awash in one-time money, but $12 million is still $12 million. Then come, I think it was December, the federal government also said, by the way, not only are the monies you're getting tax exempt, but you can continue to deduct the expenses you use that money to pay for. So you're getting the money and not paying taxes on it. And then you can further deduct the cost if you use it to pay payroll generally. So there was concern in joint fiscal and elsewhere that this was kind of like a double deduction. And there was concern, but oh, by the way, the tax forms are already printed, they're already out, and people are already filing. So the decision was for those, this tax year, 21, this is tax year 20, because it's income from last year, that all passes through. But there's two things going on here. I think there's a little feeling that, we came back and, oh, by the way, it's already a done deal and there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to lose probably $24 million and that's it. And some people can think maybe there are other ways to spend that money. And this is Vermont taxes only. The federal, which is the big exemption, still holds. This is Vermont taxes only. So what finance did, and there are two concerns. One is we don't want to be behind the 8 ball when we get back here next January and find out the feds have done 3 things that we may or may not like, and we're linked, retrospectively to the tax codes. So this bill links us up prospectively. But the issue became, what are we going with everything other than the PPP loans? The question is, what are they going to be tax exempt next year or aren't they? Finance, this was all being put on 315. 315 was fast tracked. And there was a lot of pressure coming from the administration to just get this done, do it for business. And I think finance just felt it needed to take a deep breath, to be able to take some testimony, to be able to find out what all the ins and outs are before making a final decision. So as 315 has gone or is going out the door, we are linked to the federal tax code for everything next year except the PPP provisions. And if we do nothing next year, though, when those loans become grants, they will become taxable. And then if you have used those grants as, you're required for deductible expenses, then you can deduct the cost from the grant. It is my intention, and I've been telling, and I got 5 pop-up emails since we started this caucus. So obviously somebody's putting the call out. If we do nothing next year, those loans, when they are transferred to grants, will become taxable. But we intend to take testimony, to listen to the business community, to understand what's at stake, and then we reserve the right to change that. We just need, we need a little more time to set tax policy. So that is my understanding. I know, I think every individual member on the committee has a slightly different nuance, but that's my understanding of where we stand presently.
Thank you. And what's in 315? And Michael, Senator Sirotkin, would you like to add something before I go to Senator Kitchell?
Just that when we heard from the administration, they were very insistent that we do something in terms of linking up to the loan forgiveness that took place in 2020, which people are filing their taxes for now. They were less concerned and thought we had more time to review and do due diligence on how we were going to treat the loan forgiveness that took place in 2021. And that's precisely what we're going to do.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope, and Senator Kitchell, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I just, which has been stressed, and that is 315 as we passed, we concurred with the House. The link up language was there. That's really what's being clarified is what we did in 315 for the tax year 2020, knowing that the discussion around setting tax policy for 21 was going to occur in a subsequent action, which is what is being talked about. Of course, we did. It's no secret the administration is not happy that we actually used some ARPA funds in 315 because they had their own proposal, and obviously we were spending ARPA money before they advanced their proposal. So I'm hopeful that the governor will allow 315 to become law, because it not only moves a lot of important projects forward and takes advantage of the season, but it also includes this tax policy, which is so important to so many Vermont tax filers as well as tax preparers. So I hope we can get confirmation that 315 is going to become law. Otherwise, we've got a major problem with 2020.
Right, which is the filing is May 17th.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? Senator Baruth, did you have a question?
Nope.
Okay. And Cheryl, do you see anybody? Great. I think if that clarifies that's helpful. Appreciate, because I know people have gotten emails about this. And is it may I ask Senator Cummings, are you hoping that before we adjourn we will have further guidance for tax year 21? Are we going to wait till January?
No, we will, if we are going, because of the timing involved to print hundreds of thousands of tax forms, we need to make the rules clear before we go home. I'm actually in the process of scheduling witnesses for next week. We're under a lot of pressure right now with broadband, which is massive, but I'm going to try and take a day or two next week to hear from the business community. We've heard from the tax commissioner. And then, we can get our decision out there. And then we have a miscellaneous tax bill, which is where that decision will probably be parked or decorated.
So Senator Clarkson, if I could ask Senator Cummings, just for a clarification again, this year for 2020, the PPP loans are not taxable, and the businesses can claim their costs as a deduction.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we are linked.
Yeah.
Will be, yes. No one has ever argued about 2020. I think the frustration was we were so far down the chute when all these changes happened that we felt out of control. And I think we all know we don't react well to feeling out of control. So we're trying to find a way to get a little control back in this.
Right.
And just another clarification on the taxes. This is on UI payments. We're linked
UI
to the
payments are also included. We did it in two ways, but those tax exemptions didn't come through from the feds until March. And so we are linked to the federal tax codes through March 31st of this year, which makes UI payments also tax exempt.
The first $10,200.
Yeah.
Right.
But we are linked to the federal tax code.
Right.
Thank you.
Once 315 gets passed.
Yes, we're hopeful. We're living in hope, which is what we generally do.
Well, it's passed. The
Signed.
question is, will it be
Signed.
signed or allowed
will
to
it
become
be
law
signed?
without signature?
As long as it becomes law,
Yes.
it would be great. Any
Would
other
be helpful before people file their taxes, which is what's driving tax preparers crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
We're getting down to the finish line on that one. May 17th is a blink away. Anybody
Well,
have
technically, I mean, most people, when they started, were thinking April 15th. So,
So anybody have anything else before we adjourn? Okay, great. Thank you all. You are terrific. Have great productive afternoons. See you soon. Thanks a lot.
bye. No, I'm saying